There's so many veterans that come home, like we did from Vietnam, that have never found a place. And as Americans, we need to learn how to not just pat people on the back and call them heroes, but to really want to hear the story. It takes courage to hear the story. It takes courage to tell the story. And together, if we do that, we can find a place of healing and a place of rest that we all need. I volunteered to go to Vietnam as a young kid. I wanted to experience the thrill of war, and I had no idea what that really meant until I got there and was assigned as a medic to an infantry unit, and we were up on the DMZ, which was the area between North and South Vietnam. It was a time in the wars between 1970 and 71 where there wasn't a lot of action, but there was a lot of fear. And one of the things that happened to me, I worked with a doctor and we were doing an operation. And during that time, as we were doing the operation, the helicopter left for that night to go to a support base. I missed the base and I had to sleep at this other base. And that night, my platoon went out, and it was during the monsoon season. It was very dark and rainy, and they made a wrong turn and went through our own minefield, and they were all killed but one guy. I was asked to go out the next morning, and we had to go out to the place where they were lying and pull out the body bags and put them in body bags. And these were all guys that I knew personally. They were people that were my friends. That set something off in me about authority that profoundly influenced my life. The next night they asked us to go back out on another ambush. I refused an order, and they ended up putting me into like a jail over there, where I stayed until they decided to leave me out. I got out of the jail and ended up having another issue in Vietnam where we had to make an attack into Cambodia, and that was a very difficult area. And as we were preparing to invade, I had like a breakdown at that point. And I asked God to help me. And after that, I made a decision to actually break my finger. This is the finger that was broken right here. And that finger that was broken became like a scar and a war wound for me. They wanted to cut it off. And I told them not to do that. And I was only 19 at the time. I got out of the war and started to raise a family. And many years later, a lady that I knew had a dream. And in the dream, the only thing she saw was my pinky finger. And I said to her, I said, there's no problem. I walked through all those issues from the war. I don't really have any problems. She says, well, I just wanted to tell you what the dream was. And so I put it on the back burner. And about a year later, I had a dream. And in this dream, I was being strangled by a North Vietnamese soldier. I was back in Vietnam. And I fell out of my bed. I was sweating profusely. And I actually hit my wife with my elbow in the dream because I was so afraid. I was struggling to extricate myself from this guy strangling me. And at that time, Pandora's box opened up, and I began to experience what they know now as post-traumatic stress. And I had to go through years of counseling and to try to work through a lot of the issues that I've kind of hid after coming out of Vietnam. I didn't want to deal with them then. They popped up now 30 years later. I think that one of the things that's so important is to get in touch with what you really feel about what you experienced. I think one of the hardest things for me as a Vietnam veteran was to walk through and to emotionally go back to those places that I tried so much to evade. But when I did, I came away with a great treasure, and that was the treasure of the story and what it meant to me personally, what it meant to my family. I remember one Memorial Day, I wrote out a letter and I read it to all my kids, and telling them about some of the conclusions I've come to. After that, I had the opportunity to help a lot of other veterans as they made their way through, even some guys coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan. There's so many wounded warriors, so many men that are still wounded in their hearts. They've never made it back. But I was very fortunate now that my life has been healed in a lot of ways, and I carry that. And I carry the old finger. And the finger, I was always a family who used to have a lot of laughs about the finger. But this finger is a memento. It's the scars in this finger tell the story of how a young, rebellious, angry kid went to Vietnam, was fortunate that he wasn't killed, saw a lot of his friends die, and yet came back years later, was healed from the scars in his heart, but it carries this finger as a sign of what happened and how my life was healed. And that's the story about Vietnam.